Hey Curio friends, today we're working on our paint kit that happens to be a Halloween inspired Frankenstein. Today I'm going to show you how to paint everything step by step. If you like this video, then be sure to subscribe to our page so you can get notified when new kits and new videos come up. When you get your kit, make sure you open it really carefully so that you can use this gray paper as a messy mat. Inside, you'll find that you have all the things you need to paint your project. You have your paints. You can use these out of the container, or you can use your palette. This is where we can mix different colors. You also have your paintbrush, and the only things that you'll need from home is something to be able to put water in so that you can wash your brush, and you'll also want a paper towel or a napkin, something to be able to dry your brush. So today we're working on this really cool image of Frankenstein. He is going to be our really fun Halloween inspired DIY kit, and he's very simple, but you can always kind of mix it up and make it a little bit more tricky or a little more detailed if you'd like to. So this is a great painting for all options. So today we're using just three main colors of green, black, and white. I always like to use my lightest colors first, so the first thing we're going to be using is white. I am painting on a paper so that I don't waste our canvases and that they can go to you instead. So what we're gonna do first is we're gonna hold our paintbrush like a pencil. We're gonna use our white first to make Frankenstein's teeth really nice and white. And you might be thinking like, wow, that's really silly. Why would I paint this white? It's already white from the canvas, but your canvas is kind of a flat white. It's not very shiny. And this white will dry with a nice little bit of a gloss or a shine to it. So even though your canvas is already white, you still want to do this part for the teeth because it really does make a difference when your whole project's done. It won't look like you accidentally forgot to paint it. So you're going to hold your paintbrush like a pencil and smooth out any big globs. And we go from light to dark first, so that we can kind of make any mistakes fixed as we go along the way. I'm gonna wash my brush since I'm all finished with my white, and I'm going to start my next color. If I'm going too fast for you, you can always feel free to pause the video or fast forward if you can't wait to see what it looks like at the end. So I'm gonna take my green next, and I'm still gonna use my brush that I was using for the white because it has a nice white, it has a nice point to it. So what I'm gonna do next is outline my green areas. So everywhere that I'm going to paint green, I'm going to make sure I go around that. So Frankenstein's face is going to be green. So I'm going to go around my kind of like hairline. And this is so that when I start to paint it in, I don't have to worry about accidentally covering up his hair. And if you'll notice, I'm actually, because my paintbrush is pointed, I'm starting at the point of the hair and then pulling my paintbrush back. And this kind of helps me get into those little tiny zigzags without like completely taking them over. And this part can be a little tricky. If you're a really young artist, you can always have a grown-up do this part for you as you start to do the rest. And this is just to help know where you're going to stop painting. I'm also going to paint around my eyes. And I like to turn my canvas or my paper sometimes whenever I'm working so that I'm always working close to myself. That way I'm not trying to reach way over, because sometimes when that happens, you smear the paint because your hand goes on top of wet paint. And these are all the areas that we're gonna stop our green and switch to a different color. So the mouth is gonna have more black to it. And now that I have all of this outlined, I can start to paint it in. I can still use this brush, or if you have a little bit of a larger brush at home, you could switch to that too. I'm gonna switch to my square brush, and I'm going to start painting everything in green. And you can keep Frankenstein straight green, or like we talk about in some of the other paint videos, you can always add in some different colors also to be able to make it a little bit more interesting. And I'm gonna paint just to the I'm gonna leave a little edge to my paper so it doesn't start to curl up on me, but you will be painting the side of your canvas in your whole project. Even with your bigger paintbrush being a square like this, if you're careful, you can still turn the way your paintbrush is. If you want it this big wide line, that's great. You can turn it so that your brush is giving a wide line, or if you want to get up into that little area, you can turn it so that your brush is vertical and you can get up into those little tiny areas. And it can be hard to remember, but you always want to try to smooth out those big blobs. So like I said, you could absolutely keep this just a straight up regular green, or you could also, as your project's wet, you could add in the tiniest bit of white in some different parts, and you could make him like have a little bit of a lighter green color. So it'll be a little bit lighter in some areas just to give it a little bit of depth. And you could add a little bit of black to it, but black is really dark and I'm worried that it'll kind of take over a little too much with it. And when I'm adding my white in, I'm actually not washing my brush out in between, because I do want those colors to blend together. I don't want them to be totally separate. So if you want to add your white in, you don't want it to just be a big glob of white on top. You want to work it into your wet green so that it makes it lighter. So now that this area is still wet, I'm gonna put a little bit of white in, and I can do like X's, I can just do the same direction, but because this is wet, if I kind of make these X's, I kind of blend this white into my green, so now it just looks a little bit more of a light green. And you don't have to do that. That would just be something that, you know, let's say you're finding this a little simple and you're like, oh, what could I do to like, you know, kick it up a notch? That would be something you could do to add a little bit more detail to it that maybe a younger artist wouldn't be able to do yet. And it's hard because age is totally just a number. You might have an artist who's a really awesome artist and they could do something like that and they're 5, and you might have an artist who's 9 and they're still just kind of learning how to very nicely hold their paintbrush to try to stay in the lines because that's what they want to do. So again, I'm going to turn this. And remember, if at any point you need to pause it, go ahead. I'll be here. Can see the difference a little bit between just the straight up green and some white added to it. You might choose to add white to some spots and leave some areas green, but I feel like now that I've started the white, I need to keep adding it so it looks similar. And I'm keeping my eyes and my hair empty because I'm going to be filling those in at the very end with black. I always love to save black until the very end because it takes over. It's a very dark color. You always want to make sure, even though I'm going back and forth with my brush, I'm going this way and then kind of turning my hand and pulling it this way. So all of my bristles are always staying together. Even though I'm going back and forth, it still has a nice point to my paintbrush, or like a nice flat, fine area where all the bristles meet together. What you want to be careful of is you never want to do something like this where you're pushing your brush down and you're scrubbing. That's like you're giving the paintbrush a really bad hairdo. So you want to make sure that when you're painting, even though I'm going a little quick, I'm still making sure that all of my bristles on my paintbrush are going the same direction so I don't give it a bad hairdo. I think I almost said hairbrush before. Sweet. I like the white that I added in. I'm going to keep it just like that. I think that looks good. I'm actually going to continue using my square brush, but you could move to this brush if you want to. you have a brush in your kit. If you have different brushes at home, you can use those. If you need more brushes, you could always come to Curio and we can get you hooked up with the paint kit that has different brushes that are different sizes to help you out with that too. So I said I was gonna use my square brush, but I'm gonna switch back to this one just so that I can outline in between these triangle hair pieces, just like I did before. And I turn my picture so that it is facing me so that my hand isn't going to get green from all of the green paint. I'm able to work on this spot up here that is not wet at the moment. I've had to fix many paintings from accidentally smearing stuff that I forgot was wet, so really turning your project is definitely the way to go. I'm going to turn this again. And this is a little trickier because this is wet, so I have to hold my hand up. So if you don't want to hold your hand up, you could always get a hair dryer if a family member lets you dry it. You could always just let it dry and you can come back to it. You don't have to finish these paintings all at once. You know, your paint has little lids on it and they'll last for a little while. So you could always come back to it another day and do different parts on different days. I'm just going to outline everything while I have this little kind of outlining brush. And one of the first things we did was the teeth. And we want to make sure that we don't accidentally make Frankenstein not have any teeth left. So we want to make sure that we are very careful that we don't wipe out his smile. We're making him a little friendly. He's not super creepy. By his teeth, around those, and then around his smile also. And I'm just outlining everything so that I can switch to a larger brush and then I can finish painting the rest. So I'm going to switch to my larger brush. Now I don't have to worry about going outside the lines. Really smoothing out those thicker globs. You don't want those on there. If you get your paint too thick, it can crack. But then if you don't use all the paints in your cups, you could always use it another time. I'm gonna turn it again, do his eyes. These are really fun kind of cartoon eyes. You could use them on different cartoons that you draw at home too if you want to use these eyes on something different. They're super fun. And then just like I said before, I'm gonna kind of take my brush and I'm gonna put my square brush right up into these zigzags. So you might think that you have to use a small brush, but if you can use your brush pretty well, if you have some pretty good skills with holding that brush, you don't have to always use itty bitty brushes for tiny areas. And I could add some white into here if I wanted to, but I'm kind of worried that it would make it gray looking, and I don't necessarily want my Frankenstein to look like he has gray hair. I like the contrast between it. And like I said, I'm leaving like a little space around my piece of paper because that's what I'm painting on. But you're gonna want to paint your whole canvas, and then your canvas has these sides to it. You'll even want to paint those too. That's why you're gonna put it on your messy mat. You can paint the sides and get your messy mat messy, because then, whoa, then whenever you go to hang it up, you already have something that's really nicely painted all the way around. So it's like, as soon as it's done, it's ready to hang on the wall as a decoration. Or if you have like a fireplace, you could lean it against the mantle. That would look super cool too. You could put it in your room. Oh my gosh, there's so many awesome options. Okay, there's my Frankenstein. The only thing he's missing is some of his like stitches. And I'm actually going to use this brush for my stitches. If you want to, you could wait until this is really dry, and you could use a Sharpie And you could draw your stitches on if you want to. You could do something like this, or you could paint them on. I'm going to paint them on today. So I'm going to get a little bit of paint, just a tiny bit, because I don't want big globs. I still want this to be really thin. And I'm gonna pull my paintbrush towards myself. I'm gonna add the stitches. So I'm gonna start over here. I have a little bit of paint. I'm gonna pull the paintbrush to me. I put my little pinky down sometimes to help me keep my brush steady. And I'm just gonna do these couple stitching lines. You could also use a tinier brush if you want to. And I'm going to go over top of where I drew it in Sharpie, just because I want it to all match. And there you go. There's Frankenstein. He's awesome, ready to hang up as a decoration for Halloween. I always suggest that you get a chance to maybe have your kids write their names and the date on the back so you have a remembrance of whenever they did it. So when you bring it out every year for the holiday, you can think about what time they did it. I really hope that when you're finished, you put your picture on social media. Make sure you tag Curio Cool and subscribe to our page to new kits, new fun things, and new videos on different art techniques, tricks, and tips. We'll see you later.